right. Thank you so much, Veronica. If anybody, if for whatever reason I cut out, audio wise or something, just let me know. So as always, we've got a ton of great information to cover today, and this is out of a course that we have in our online community called The Importance of Sleep. And it's a pretty comprehensive course. It's about everything that you'd want to know about sleep. And I've put together a custom little form for the BioKip UHC, Rebecca-based employees here. So if you want to take a moment, you can, that's a QR code there. I'll have that up on the screen again later. And once you get your emails in there, I'll send out some follow-up information a little bit later today, okay? Now, we're all coming into this with different goals. We're all trying to improve our health. I think it's such a wonderful and amazing thing that this is being made available to you, because there's a lot of companies out there that do not do this for their people. And I'm sure that you see it in your productivity and your morale and your improved costs, like your reduced healthcare costs and things like that. By the way, this is such good, useful info. I know the temptation when you're sitting at your computer to tab over and do other stuff. If you can just for the next hour, just be completely focused on what this is, because it is a gift. It's some great info. So anyway, most of us come into this looking for some body composition changes, some improved performance, or maybe just overall health, which is what I think most of us are looking for. And if we're really honest about it, it's about feeling better and optimizing the way that we feel. And we understand that sleep is a huge piece of this. Most of us can acknowledge that, if we really think about why we're trying to do all this health stuff, it's because we want to be happy and we want to live this life that we were meant to live. And we truly believe that it starts with health, because when you find health, you find yourself, and everything about your life changes. Your life situation may not change at all, your work situation, your relationship, but if your health and change improves, just imagine how you would show up different to everything. That's what this is all about. Sleep is a huge piece of it. Most people think that when they want to get healthier or improve something with their health, it's all about fitness and nutrition. And because nutrition is so freaking confusing, most people try to work out as much as they can. And what we would say is that every bit of it matters. We have all these different foundations that we teach, and you'll notice that sleep is one of these foundations. It's a very important one. If you improve your sleep, everything about your life will get better. If you improve your nutrition, everything about your life will get better. So today, that's kind of what we're talking about. And just to give you a really, really brief intro about me, I am just like all of you. Ever since I was a little kid, I was a seeker. I had dreams. I wanted to travel the world and make a bunch of money. And as I got older, for a lot of different reasons, I got sucked into society's idea of what it is to be successful. I got sucked into society's way of eating, and my health deteriorated over time. I started questioning all the advice that I received, and I became very disillusioned because I wasn't seeing the results that I wanted, and I wasn't living the life of my dreams. And I hit my rock bottom in my mid-30s, high blood pressure, pre-diabetic, 270 pounds. When it came to sleep, you can probably resonate with this. I was a night owl. I stayed up late every night. I slept in to the best of my abilities, but I was a workaholic. So I sacrificed everything, including my sleep, to try to be more productive. And knowing what I know now, that was the opposite of what I needed to do. And then I would, like a lot of people, probably try to catch up on the weekends and, have a different sleep schedule on the weekends, which was actually the worst thing I could have done for my sleep, but I just didn't realize it at the time. So at that disillusionment point, I went against everything that I thought was healthy and did almost the exact opposite. I avoided things that we told were bad for our health, and embraced things that we were told were bad for our health. And I completely revamped the way that I look, feel, and performed. And I dream again. I found myself. I love my life, and I owe it all to the gift of health. Just a really quick background on me. I'm a West Point grad. I was in the military for a while, commissioned officer for a little bit. I've been through just countless certifications in schools on training and health coaching. And half of it was wrong. I realize now that a lot of people can be experts, and you can even get a PhD in the wrong information. So not only do I have a lot of schooling and certifications, I also have a lot of experience in working with a lot of people. Here in Vegas, Becky's known me since I started back in 2011 or so here in Vegas. And I've worked with hundreds of people who've come through this office, probably bordering around 1,000. I've had thousands of people go through our group progressions. And I only say that because this stuff that you learn from us is born out of experience. Like, it's not just learning something, it's learning it, putting it into practice, teaching it, getting feedback, and it continues to evolve over time. And today I look and feel and perform better than I ever have in my life. And if you want to check us out on any of the social platforms, we've got really, really great reviews. So I like to know that someone has a little bit of credibility when I'm listening to them or working with them. So today, again, we're talking about the importance of sleep. I've got some amazing handouts summarizing everything that we're talking about today. I've got this awesome little checklist that's super comprehensive. And we have that available in our online community, but then also if you just do this little QR code, I'll also email out the link for the form to Becky and make sure that we send that out to everyone so that you have access to those forms, okay? If you want to connect with us on social media and stuff, there's a QR code for that. We'll put that up a little bit later as well. All right, so today we're going to be talking about why sleep is important, how sleep works, a little bit about circadian rhythms, and then if we have time, we'll talk about how to improve duration and quality, because that's what it's really about, right? So first, let's just start with some really fascinating stuff. We spend more time sleeping than any other activity in our entire life. And I should clarify that and say not necessarily sleeping. For a lot of us, it's attempting sleeping, because a lot of us don't sleep very well. So if we live to be 80 years old, 60 years of that is lived awake and 20 years of that is lived sleeping. That's mind-blowing to me. That's a lot of time sleeping. We know when someone is sleeping. So I can walk into a room, I can see someone pass out on the couch, and I know they're sleeping versus something else, right? And also, we know when we personally have slept. When you wake up, you know that you just slept, whether it was 5 minutes or 5 hours. During sleep, every single one of your senses still functions, right? Your eyes still see, your ears still hear, your body still touches, your mouth still tastes, your nose still smells. We know all of this because of our vivid dreaming. And during sleep, as we all know, when you dream, like, time completely distorts, and at the same time, your brain is maintaining this unbelievable time accuracy. And most of us notice this when we self-alarm and wake up and kind of guess what time it is. And on the self-alarm thing, if you've got really good sleep habits, you can usually tell yourself, like, I experiment with this every now and then. I usually get up at 3:30. Sometimes I'll say I want to wake up at 3:36. And it's bizarre. Like, a lot of the time I actually wake up right around 3:36 according to my clock. Also very fascinating is when you hit snooze, it's like, again, you go into a time warp and it's only been like a couple of minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes or something. So I thought that was just really interesting, fascinating stuff. So let's get into a little bit of why sleep is important. And again, if you have questions or comments as you're going through this, if you like it, give me a thumbs up. If you love it, I don't know if there's a love icon, but then also you can put your questions in the chat and we'll make sure to try to address them. So let's talk a little bit about why sleep is important. This will give us a little bit of leverage about why we want to try to improve it. So when it comes to the workplace, what do a lot of these events right here have in common? One of the causing factors is that people are sleep deprived, right? So sleep deprivation can induce a lot of problems in the workplace. You're going to be less effective. You're going to be more likely to be involved in some kind of an accident or injury. You're going to be more likely to be involved in a workplace accident, and that's kind of what we're talking about here. We're all at work and taking advantage of this information. You're 2 times more likely to die in a workplace accident, and I guess that also depends on the type of work that you're in. But sleep deprivation has an equivalence to being impaired by alcohol. So if you have 17 hours of sustained wakefulness, it's the same as having a few drinks. And then once we get up to having only 4 hours of sleep, it's the same impact as having a 6-pack of beer. Not that I drink beer anymore, but maybe 6 drinks. That's kind of crazy. And I think most of us can probably resonate with this. When you have really poor sleep, you're just not as functional. Some of the signs of sleep deprivation that we see, very common signs, are going to be some weight problems. Usually it's weight gain for most of us, and we can talk in depth about why that happens, but you basically have some metabolic derangement. You don't make energy the right way. Your cravings are completely different. You're borderline kind of pre-diabetic or diabetic, just in that state of being in poor sleep. You have your physical issues that start to creep up, and then, of course, we all notice how our mood is impacted by poor sleep. So there's a lot of different health problems that can come from sleep depending on how long you have a problem with sleeping. A couple of nights is not the same as having sleep deprivation over an extended period of time. So we believe that insufficient sleep is a public health epidemic. 30% of adults suffer from sleep deprivation. That's a lot. All right, so one beer has the same impact on a person with 4 hours of sleep as 6 beers has on a well-rested person. Severe insomnia causes employees to miss work twice as often as good sleepers. So there's a lot of reasons that we want to sleep. Let's talk a little bit about some more. Sleep is important because every physiological, biological, and psychological function depends on it. Sleep is where the magic of all the recuperation and stuff happens. After one night of poor sleep, and we all know this, we can see it in each other, we can see it in ourselves, I can see it in the mirror when I get up in the morning on the few nights that I don't have a good sleep. You just don't look as good. You're going to have poor blood sugar handling issues, meaning you're going to have different kinds of cravings and urges. You tend to be a little bit more snackier. And then emotionally, like you're very moody and sensitive and reactive. It's very difficult to focus. And you start to get a suppressed immune system. And I noticed that the few times that I get sick, it's almost always after a really poor night of sleep or a couple poor nights of sleep or maybe staying out late with some friends or something along those lines. And that's just one night. Now, if we start to get into consecutive nights of poor sleep, then you start to see some of your health risk factors increase dramatically. So you start to see your stroke risk increase by 4. So if you have a predisposition for cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, or if you already have some cardiac issues going on, then having sleep deprivation is going to enhance the probability that something happens. After an extended period of time, because you're in that blood sugar handling issue state, then you're going to start to accumulate excess body fat, even if you're eating really good and even if you're working out and doing all the things that you need to do to have a really good body weight, because your body is in this state of blood sugar handling dysregulation. So your diabetes risk increases, you start to have system-wide inflammation, you have low sex drive and low fertility, and you start to increase your risk of death from all causes. So sleep is important because it's going to, from a brain perspective, enhance your ability to learn. You're going to memorize and make good decisions a lot better. It resets your emotions so that you can navigate next day's challenges a little bit better. And dreaming, as we'll learn a little bit later, it has an evolutionary purpose because it starts to blend your useful memories with what's actually happening in your current experience. So sleep is something that's evolutionary, it's primordial in us, and it's something that we all need. From a physical perspective, if you have consistently good sleep, then what you'll notice is your immune system starts to restock itself, because this is really the only time that it can effectively deal with malignancy and infection and different sicknesses. Because during the day, think about it, the body is all systems go, and it's very difficult to deal with these things unless you're in a very rested state. It resets your metabolic state. So we're talking about blood sugar handling issues. If you have a really good sleep, then theoretically in the morning you have really good insulin sensitivity. That's why it's really good to measure fasting glucose as a sign of good metabolic health. Your microbiome modulates. So same thing, we have all these different microorganisms living with us, and they need rest too. You have inputs going on all day, you have stress, you have the environment, you have food going into your system, and so sleep is one of those few times that the microbiome can kind of modulate itself. And then you'll notice that ideally, theoretically, your pulse should be at its lowest, you should be at your lowest stress rate during your sleep, so that's when your cardiovascular health starts to improve and heal itself. So I think we all know that diet and exercise are important, but now people like myself and Becky and people that are sleep advocates understand that sleep is a game changer, and sleep is something that you can improve regardless of whether you've got an exercise program in place or whether you're making improvements in your nutrition or not. And those things are really important, but sleep is where it's at. Sleep is magical. And some of us here in the gym, we'll come in and just be like, how'd you sleep last night? I slept great. And we know, okay, that's a really good thing, So big takeaways just from that little section. Sleep is very important. Sleep is synergistic with all our other health foundations. So if you're trying to do better with your nutrition, you're trying to do better with your fitness program, when you get your sleep dialed in, it enhances those things. It's synergistic with those other health efforts. And so we have to make sleep a priority. All right? That's our first little section. Can I get a thumbs up? All right. And I assume that we are still hearing things. Cool. Love it, love it, love it. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Remember, put your questions in the chat. We're going to keep moving through this. I want to make sure that we have some good time for some questions and stuff. So this is fascinating stuff right here. This is also going to give us some leverage to try to improve our duration and quality of sleep. So this is, we're going to talk about how sleep works, right? Now, some of this info we've gotten from a book called Why We Sleep. If you haven't read that, Matthew Walker, really, really great book. I've got a couple other recommendations that I'll send out in that follow-up. Some of them are like evolutionary-based sleep books, you know, studying hunter-gatherer populations and non-modernized populations. Let's just talk a little bit about what happens during sleep. So most of us have probably heard about sleep cycles. And sleep cycles, we basically, if someone's sleeping well, you're going to cycle through 5 sleep cycles. And you'll notice that within each of these cycles, you're going to go from a waking state down through what we call to be these deeper stages of sleep, and then back up to a waking state. So there's a few things that I want to point out here. Number one, we have, in an ideal situation, we need to get 5 cycles of sleep. And that makes an argument for the duration that we need to be in bed, okay? So you'll see down at the bottom, I think for most people, this is going to average between 7 and 9 hours to be able to cycle through 5 different cycles. So this is making an argument for the amount of time that you need to be in bed. Now, another thing to point out here is that most people are probably going to wake up 1 or 2 times in the middle of the night. And that's nothing to stress about. So a lot of people, the waking up in the middle of the night stresses them out because they think they're not supposed to wake up. And that thinking that you're not supposed to wake up adds to the non-sleeping. And so a conversation you can have with yourself right now is, it's normal. It's okay to wake up. And when you wake up, you just roll over and you go back to bed. Or you get up and use the bathroom, do what you got to do, grab a drink of water. And it's totally fine and totally normal. I remember some of these anthropological books that I read. You know, a lot of these hunter-gatherer populations, like they get up, they go back to bed, they get up and they do stuff, you know, and then they go back to bed. So it's totally normal to wake up a couple times in the middle of the night. Something else that's really important to notice here is that there's different times that we spend in these different stages depending on the cycle that you're in. So for most people, if you're sleeping well, your earlier cycles, you're spending more time in your deeper stages, the stages 3 and 4, and in the hours closer to the morning, or the cycles closer to the morning, you're spending more time in the REM stage, right? This is also called the dreaming stage. So I think what's important to understand here is that if I cut my sleep off because I'm trying to be more productive, then I'm not shortening this whole thing, I'm cutting it off. If I cut it off by 2 hours, I'm missing an entire cycle of sleep, which is, by the way, where I do a lot of my dreaming, which we're going to learn about. It's very, very important. So you need the duration in order to get through these cycles, and also to have the appropriate amount of time in each one of these different stages. I think that's the argument that I'm trying to make. So during the day, brain cells, everything is firing. It's crazy, okay? When you go to sleep, it's like you have this orchestra, what do you call it, maestro, that is managing an orchestra, and you're sending these pulsations through the brain, and it starts to organize the brain again. I liken it to, I don't know if we still have this on computers, but I remember when I was in college, we had disk defragmenter, you know, and you do this little thing and it would organize your disk space and make it more efficient. That's kind of what sleep does for our brain. Another analogy would be, if I'm a sculptor, I have this big block of clay, my deep excavation where I'm taking off the big chunks, that's the non-REM sleep, or those deeper stages of sleep, stages 2 through 4. And then the REM sleep, the dreaming state, is where I'm doing a lot of the fine-tuning, okay? So if we come back to the 5 cycles, we'll see that a lot of the physical recuperation happens in the deeper stages of sleep. So physical recuperation and healing, immune system, restocking, metabolic state healing. And then for the mental piece, we have that REM sleep, and that is where we kind of strengthen our remaining connections. So you can also think about, from a brain perspective, those deeper stages, we're cleaning and removing, theoretically, and this is, again, primordial, kind of evolutionary, we're supposed to be clearing out memories and things that don't really serve us. And then we're keeping some of those things that we feel like are useful, and we're integrating it with our current experience. That's kind of what dreaming is. It's like a virtual reality where we're blending current experience with past memories that we feel like are still serving us in some way. Now, we can't logically deduce that from seeing what a dream is literally, but that's kind of what's happening in the dreaming state as far as what we know. So my point here is that because of how sleep works, because of the five cycles, and because of those stages, REM sleep all the way through stage 4, we need both the duration and the quality of sleep. So duration would ensure that we're getting 5 cycles. Quality means that we're going from a wake state to a REM state to those deeper stages. And we're going to talk about how to improve quality. This equates to brain health and physical health over time. All right, so think about it like this. When we're awake, we are receiving, we're experiencing, we're using sensory input, and we're also using the physical body. When we're in our deeper stages of sleep, we are having deep reflection. Again, this isn't conscious, this is non-conscious. We're cleaning, clearing, storing, strengthening facts and skills, and we're also healing the body. And then during our dreaming state, during REM sleep, we have this integration, interconnection, problem solving, and using useful insights to live a better life. All right, so big takeaways from this little section about how sleep works is we have to prioritize sleep. We have to make sleep a priority if we want to look, feel, and perform our best, and if we want to feel better. We need the duration of 7 to 9 hours, and that's going to be very bio-individual for everyone. I think starting out, we have to try for that 7 to 9 hours, and then some of us may feel like we get away with a little bit less than that. But we also need quality of sleep to cycle through the different stages, and we'll talk about how to achieve that here in just a little bit. All right? Cool. Can I get a thumbs up? We got any questions? What's going on? You doing all right, Becky? Let me know if I need to address anything. All right, cool. Let's keep it up. So, next little section here. Let's talk a little bit about circadian rhythms. So, circadian rhythms, a lot of people have probably heard of. Some people haven't. Circadian rhythms are basically, when you think about it, ever since the beginning of time as we know it and life on this planet, we've had this, what has given life to the planet has been the sun. And we have this perception of a rising and setting of the sun, but what's really happening is the Earth is rotating. And so we have this ebb and flow of light and dark. And the light gives energy and life to the planet. The dark gives the planet rest for most animals. I mean, some animals are kind of switched and nocturnal, but every living organism on the planet, including cells and bacteria and plants and insects and reptiles and mammals, every animal on the planet is in sync with this. We call it a circadian rhythm, which is an estimated 24-hour cycle. Every animal living thing on the planet is in sync with this, except for human beings, because we have taken ourselves out of sync because of modern technology. So our cells have an internal clock, our tissues, our organs, our organ systems, we all have this internal clock that is dominantly dictated by the rotation of the Earth and the perception of the rising and setting of the sun. There's a lot of things that can impact circadian rhythms, including like when we eat, the timing that we eat, our exercise cycles, social cycles, the temperature is a big one, hormones, but the biggest driver for this is going to be light, and that's because the sun gives us the most powerful signal of light during the day. I know that a lot of us have seen this before. I know Becky's very familiar with it, stress and cortisol and melatonin secretion. So first thing in the morning, if you're in sync with circadian rhythms, then you have really good hormonal patterns because your cortisol spikes first thing in the morning to help you mobilize energy. And most of us know this when we sleep well because first thing in the morning you get that little jolt. And ideally, if you have, again, good circadian rhythms and good sleep patterns, your cortisol is going to taper off later in the day, and that's synonymous with the sun going down. And then when your cortisol tapers off, then you have this ability to secrete melatonin, and melatonin is going to initiate the cascade into the deeper stages of sleep. All right, so this balance, a lot of it is dictated by the light and dark cycles. But there are a couple of things that we can do to set our circadian rhythms. Even if you're a shift worker, you can actually set your circadian rhythms. There's a couple of things we need. The first thing we need is consistency with our schedule. So back when I was doing my all-nighters for work, and on the weekends I tried to catch up on my sleep, it was actually a really bad thing to do for my sleep because the body needs consistency to set a schedule. And if it doesn't have that consistency, then it's very difficult to get into a pattern. We also need consistency with the light and dark, all right? Whether we use natural light outside or if we have shift work and we're trying to mimic that in some way. And we'll talk about a few strategies with that, okay? Cool, so that's just a little primer on circadian rhythms. We got some more in-depth stuff on that inside our community. If you have any questions, just let me know. I think that's useful to understand because when we talk about improving duration and quality, then it makes a little bit more sense. All right, so let's first talk about how to improve duration. Now remember, the importance of duration is it's giving us the ability to cycle through the 5 cycles, all right? And we need all those 5 cycles. And the 5 cycles, each one of us is going to be a little bit different. 7 to 9 hours on average is what most of us are going to need. All right, so we have a framework inside our community for improving duration. It's understanding these 5 cycles, which we just talked about. We have an exercise we have our people go through, which is mapping out a perfect day, helping them make incremental goals, making sure they stay awake to build some sleep pressure, and using the power of alarms. So I'm going to share a few of those with you right now. So remember we talked about the 5 cycles. So one thing that we can do, and as an exercise, and this is also in the handouts that I'll send out, is just get in your mind that you need 8 hours of bedtime. Right? And bedtime, again, does not imply that you're just knocked out the entire time. Bedtime means that you have 8 hours where you're in bed, allowing yourself to cycle through being awake and going through your different stages. Less than 6 hours of sleep continuously can be extremely deadly. All right, we've seen that in the literature. Now, the first thing that you can do is figure out what is your ideal rise time. All right, we all know what time we have to get up in the morning in order to have a good day. And I would factor in your quiet time, making your breakfast, whatever so you're not walking out the door kind of crazy. So we all know what time we need to get up in the morning. So then we can backwards track 8 hours and figure out what our ideal bedtime is. Now, that may not be achievable or may not feel like it's achievable initially. And that's totally fine. Just knowing that, I think planting that seed in the back of your mind is going to be powerful, but then we can also incrementally improve our sleep by 30 minutes for a couple weeks. So we usually recommend improve your sleep by 30 minutes. If you're going to bed right now at 10:30, but you need to be in bed by 9, start going to bed at 10 o'clock for a couple weeks until that gets to be habitual. And then improve that by another 30 minutes over time. And I guarantee you, just improving it by 30 minutes, you're going to see some dramatic results. I love to set an alarm for getting to bed on time. So a lot of people get so caught up in life that they will forget, oh my God, it's 10 minutes before we're supposed to be in bed. So I usually recommend an hour and a half to 2 hours before bedtime that you actually have an alarm go off on your phone that tells you, hey, it's time to start getting ready for bed. And what's really cool about that alarm is you can't unsee the alarm. So when it goes off, no matter where you're at or what you're doing, it's like, oh, I need to be in bed here in about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And even if you're in a position that you can't, you've just told your mind, you've told your body, you've given yourself this unconscious cue to start getting ready for bed, and chances are you're going to start getting tired. So again, the 2 things that we need to improve our circadian rhythms is the consistency with schedule. So now we know the importance of what's my rise time, what's my ideal bedtime, what can I do just a little bit better to improve that. And then also using alarms, I think, is very, very powerful. I use alarms for all kinds of different things, right? So I thought I saw a question in here. Is that something I need to address right now, Becky? Yeah. Let's see, maybe. Okay, cool. We will get to the questions, I promise, okay? Something else as we're talking about duration is this importance of being awake to build what we call sleep pressure. So sleep pressure is basically, I don't know if these graphs are going to make any sense here, but the longer you stay awake, the more that you have what we call sleep drive build, right? And when you first wake up, you have a big wake drive. You want to stay awake. And then the longer you stay awake, the less of a wake drive you have. Till at some point you have a really strong sleep drive and you have a very low wake drive. This is the ideal time to go to sleep. And then when you go to sleep, you have less of a sleep drive because you just made yourself sleep, right? So theoretically, you're going to have this strong urge to sleep the longer you stay awake, right? Now, one thing that can disrupt that is going to be caffeine. Now, the reason caffeine disrupts that is because as we stay awake, we have this neurotransmitter called adenosine that's going to fill these receptor spots in the brain, and that is one of the things that gives us the sensation of being tired. The reason caffeine feels like a stimulant is because it occupies the receptor sites for adenosine, And so what that means is as I'm staying awake and I'm starting to get tired and I'm building sleep pressure because adenosine is filling those receptor sites, caffeine is blocking adenosine from filling those receptor sites. So I have this perception of feeling more awake, right? That's the way that caffeine works. So caffeine has a half-life inside the body of about 3 to 7 hours. We'd say on average for most people about 6 hours, which means that if I have 100 milligrams of caffeine, 6 hours later, I still have 50 milligrams of caffeine floating through my brain and through my system. And I just need to be aware of that. I always recommend that people have a cutoff time for their caffeine intake. First of all, a takeaway from this is that we need time awake in order to get tired. It sounds kind of common sense, but I think we all need to hear that. We need to be awake for a certain period of time in order to feel tired. And then we also need to moderate our caffeine intake. What we recommend is stopping your caffeine intake at least 6 hours before bedtime, ideally 7 or 8 hours before bedtime. So I know this sounds crazy, but I'm usually in bed by about 7:30 most nights, but it's because I get up really early. And my body is set with that. I've set my schedule. I've entrained my body and my circadian rhythms with that, plus that kind of aligns with light and dark cycles because I'm up during the day and asleep during the night. But anyway, my cutoff time for my caffeine consumption is 12 p.m., is noon. So I have just made a decision that at noon, I'm done drinking coffee. I'm done having caffeine. I may have a decaf cup or an herbal tea or something like that, but I'm telling you right now, just making the decision to cut my caffeine off, and what is that, 7 hours before bedtime, 8 hours before bedtime, has made a dramatic improvement in my sleep. So, all right, so continuing with some of the things that we can do to improve sleep. So we've just talked about the importance of how to build duration, figuring out what time we have to get up, using the power of alarms, backwards tracking. Now we understand the importance of staying awake to build sleep pressure, the impact that caffeine has on us. So now let's talk a little bit about mimicking the day during the day. So during the day, there's what is known as this power of lux, or power of light intensity, that's called lux, right? And so the brighter the intensity, the more the lux. On a full daylight day without any cloud cover, you're looking at about 25,000 to 100,000 lux. All right, so that's on a bright day, you're out in the midday sun. And that doesn't mean that you're sunbathing either. It could mean that you're just under the shade of a tree, but you're still getting this brightness. On a moonless night, you're looking at, what is that? Is that 1,000th or 10,000th of a lux? Whatever, it's really small. On a full moon night, you have 1 lux, okay? So notice that contrast between a full moon night of 1 lux and a full daylight light of 100,000 lux. That's crazy. It's so bright during the day. You ever notice how when you're driving around at night and you got a cop car pull somebody over and the blinking lights are like almost so bright it makes you squint? You're like, dang, that's bright. But then during the day, a cop has somebody pulled over and you don't even notice the lights barely, right? That's how bright the sunlight is. That is the kind of signal that we need, or that is beneficial to set our circadian rhythms in a positive direction. Now here's something else that's important to notice. There's in between that 1 lux and that really full daylight day, we have all these other levels of lux, okay? My cell phone, our cell phones, and the newer versions have more light intensity, have up to 50, sometimes 100 lux. That's really, really bright. Our office lighting usually has 500 to about 1,000 lux, depending on the type of lights that you use. We'll talk about why that's important here in just a moment. So, first of all, one thing that we can do to improve the quality of our sleep, to ensure that we go through our different stages, is to get brightness every single day. And what we mean by brightness is, number one, it doesn't mean going out and suntanning, although I think that's really beneficial to get sun exposure on the skin. What we mean by that is, number one, you can brighten up your home during the day when you first wake up, open up your blinds, open up your shades just a little bit, turn on your lights, just have this intention to have things nice and bright. Also, we recommend that you get outside and you get 30 minutes of cumulative brightness every single day. Cumulative means that it doesn't have to happen in a 30-minute stint. It means that you can go outside for a 10-minute walk at 10 a.m. You can go outside for a 15-minute lunch break, at noon. You can get another 5 or 10 minutes like early afternoon or something along those lines. So it's very forgiving as long as you make a conscious effort to get outside, go for a walk, have your lunch outside, take some breaks outside. And again, you don't have to be sunbathing. You can be under the shade of an awning or a tree, but you're still getting that brightness. That's the signal that we need to improve our circadian rhythms in a positive direction. I also recommend that people get direct sun exposure on their skin at least a few days a week. But I mean, that helps with our circadian rhythms. It also helps with other health things. So big takeaways here is that we need that 30 minutes of bright outdoor sun exposure. Again, not direct exposure, just brightness exposure, and it's beneficial to get some sun exposure most days during the week. I do want to highlight back on this slide here where we have the different luxes. If I'm inside an office environment all day long, I am not hitting that max 25,000 to 100,000 lux that I would get from the brightness of the sun, because my office lighting is way less than that, usually 500 to 1,000 lux. So most people spend a lot of their day inside an office with very dim lighting compared to the sun, and so we're not getting that strong signal. So it's an argument for getting outside and understanding that we're shielding ourselves from that brightness. From an evolutionary perspective, we would be outside a lot more, okay? Cool, so brighten up the home and get 30 minutes of cumulative sun exposure most days, right? Looking at that little diagram again, another thing that a lot of us are having a problem with is at night, we do things in the opposite direction. So some of us during the day, we're in the office, we're not getting enough brightness. In the evening, we're getting too much brightness, because from an evolutionary perspective, the brightest light we'd ever experience in an evening would be a full-lit moon, which doesn't even happen that often. But most of us are on our cell phones, we're on our computers, we're on televisions, we have really, really bright lights inside the home. Most people have replaced their incandescent bulbs with LED bulbs that are really white and really bright, and I think they're almost toxic feeling, but and there's different versions of it, some healthier ones. I don't think that's as important as just understanding this here so we can protect ourselves from it. So if I have a lot of brightness at night, and if the sun going down is my body's signal to secrete melatonin to help me cycle through my stages of sleep, then being exposed to that brightness from my phone, my computer, my television is going to delay melatonin secretion by 2 to 3 hours. So I go to bed at 7:30 p.m. I just got done watching TV and watching something really bright on my computer. I'm not going to secrete melatonin until a little bit later in the night, which is going to make me have some poor quality sleep. So, watching TV in bed, watching Terminator with explosions and surround sound and all that stuff, although we love our technology, it might not be doing the best thing for us. So another thing that we can do to improve the quality, to make sure that we go through these different stages, is mimic the night during the night. So just like we brighten up the home during the day, when you come home in the afternoon and the evening, and we do this, as soon as I get home in the evening, we kind of close our blinds, we try to make things nice and dim, we light some candles for dinner, and so you want to kind of just dim everything down. I think what might be ideal is if you had some dimmer switches or something like that, but definitely trying to minimize your light exposure, because you want things to cool down a little bit, all right? So that brightness tone needs to come down. Another thing that we can do to improve our sleep in the bedroom is make the bedroom kind of like a really dark and cool cave. When you walk into my bedroom at night, it is like a hurricane. I've got like a Lowe's industrial freaking room circulator fan in there. I have it pointed up to the ceiling. I got wind going. I love noise, a little bit of ambient noise. I have our thermostat set for the bedroom. We actually close all the vents to the rest of our place and only open up the vents in the bedroom at night. And so we turn the air down to like 65 degrees or something like that. And so the room is really nice and cool. And so you're giving the body this signal of coolness, which is a signal of sleep. So you think about it like warmth, daylight, that's a signal of energy. No sun, darkness, coolness is a signal for sleep. So that's another thing that we can do to improve the quality of our sleep. Is it good to fast on the day after poor sleep? Well, talking about the, I think that's a great question. Talking about the metabolic derangement that happens when you have poor sleep and you have this tendency to want to snack, right? I think it could be beneficial as long as you're not forcing it, because then you could run into the opposite problem, which would be low blood sugar, right? So I think most of us have experienced some low blood sugar issues where you're really irritable and you can't focus. So you could try to fast, and as you're trying to fast, maybe have an appropriate snack available. And I think an appropriate snack would be something that's not sugar-based, right? So if I wake up and I'm super munchy during the day and I just can't control it because, like I'm getting irritable, then I'll have some beef jerky or, some vegetable sticks or a salad or something with some healthy fats and half an avocado or something along those lines. So yeah, maybe trying to fast would be good, but not forcing it, because then you may run into the opposite problem. Okay, another good question is, should we take naps daily? I think naps can be useful if you don't do them for long durations. I think the most that you'd want to do a power nap would be like 20 minutes. You know, if 10 or 15-minute nap, totally fine. One or two in a day, totally fine. But if you're noticing yourself needing those a lot, I personally have gotten to the point where my sleep's so freaking on point that it's just not something that usually kind of hits me unless I had a poor night's sleep. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Um, I think that we should notice the difference between just wanting this little power nap versus like being really tired all the time. And if we're being really tired all the time, that's probably an indication that we need to improve something about our sleep, whether it's the duration or quality or something. Yeah, absolutely. So it's one of the things that we can add to that brightness every day, right? So I love that point because we have this sleep program. We call it 13.5, so it's days to sleeping like a champ, and we send out this little module every day for 2 weeks. And one of them is catching the sunrise, and one of them is catching the sunset. And the reason that can be beneficial is because you're telling your body where the sun is in the day, right? So if I see the sunrise, it's like my body knows intuitively the direction, the duration, the frequency, and so it knows what time of day it is. That sets a tone for the day. It gives me an idea of how long I'm going to be awake or need to be awake, and how long the sun's going to be up. And then same thing if you catch the sunset, the body intuitively knows where the sun is in position relative to the earth, and you have this whole intensity, duration, frequency thing happening. So I think it can be very, very powerful, and it's beautiful. So yeah, I love that. All right, so if we have a few more minutes, then I can tab over and cover just a little bit about some technology that we can use, because I feel like a lot of people get some benefit out of that. You've probably seen some crazy people like myself wearing blue light blocking glasses, and a lot of people want to know how we can use that to kind of improve what it is that we're doing. So let me just pull up my little technology piece here that I have in this other little section, and here we go. All right, so let's see if I can share my screen all the time.
Do you have pictures, or do I need to go get my glasses?
Yeah, I got some pictures. So one thing that we can do, let's just say that you don't have the ability to get outside as often as you want. I actually used this with my fiance. She was in a situation where it was very, very difficult for her to get outside and get this 30 minutes, although she loves it. Like we both just love being outdoors, right? You can get a light therapy device, and there's plenty that you can get on Amazon and other places that like have this really, really powerful lux that has a broad spectrum of lights, and you can set this up at your desk by your computer so that as you're working, you're getting that brightness signal. It's not the exact same as getting outside, but we do see a tremendous improvement in setting circadian rhythms in a positive direction. I also recommend that people that are addicted to wearing sunglasses don't wear sunglasses all the time, because you're shielding out a lot of that brightness. If you're looking for the 30 minutes of cumulative brightness every day, then wearing sunglasses is going to mitigate that to a large degree. And I'm not saying don't ever wear sunglasses. I'm just saying that, we need to be exposed to natural light to some degree at some point, So wearing them all the time might not be beneficial. When we're trying to mimic the night during the night, some things that we can do, I mentioned it earlier, we can install dimmer switches in the home. I think that's a really, really great idea. If you own your home or you have the ability to install dimmer switches, that will minimize that brightness exposure. And then a lot of us wear blue light blocking glasses. It's just part of the deal. Like when I come home, usually we'll come home, we'll make dinner, we'll eat, we'll go to the dog park, and as soon as I get back from the dog park, it's a couple hours before bedtime, I'll put on my blue light blocking glasses. These blue light blocking glasses will shield the brightness from your overhead lights, from your television, from your computer, from your cell phone. I feel like a lot of us it may feel impossible to stay off of everything once you get home because you're trying to wind down, maybe you like to watch a movie or something, but at least when you're wearing these blue light blocking glasses, you're filtering out the brightness, because that's what's really messing with your sleep, is the brightness from the TVs and stuff is mimicking the brightness that we get during the day. And I think it's worth investing in a really good, solid quality pair. I've got a couple brands up here that I really like. I've got some RA Optics that I really love. They all look pretty cool, we used to have to wear these construction goggles that looked horrible, but I don't mind wearing these out in public now. So something else that you can do is you can install Flux on your computer. I think there's also something you can install on your cell phone. Flux will actually change the dynamics of the colors on your screen and the brightness on your computer screen. After the sun goes down, it's synced with your geographical location. It knows the rise and setting of the sun. And so if you're on your computer, it will filter out that bright light, blue light frequency. And then I mentioned before, I love having a fan. I love having a noisemaker. We set our thermostat to really cool in the evening. And then we also have blackout curtains in our room. So our bedroom window, even at night, it's like we have street lights coming in, and we got car lights sometimes that'll kind of bounce off of something and flash in there. So we're trying to minimize every bit of light exposure that we have during the evening, because your body has light receptors all over it. You'll even if you cover your face completely up and you're asleep, if someone cuts the light on, you know it, you feel it. So blackout curtains are really powerful. They have ones that you can actually open up so you can brighten up things during the day. I love having a really powerful fan. And then we've installed these orange and red night lights all over our place, so that when we get up to use the bathroom, we're not waking each other up by cutting on the light or something like that. And it's the perfect amount of light that you can use to see. And because it's red or amber colored, it's not going to disrupt your circadian rhythms. I have one of these old school Marpacks, man. My mom used to have one of these at home when I was a kid. And so we've got one of these next to our bed. I love ambient noisemakers because it filters out noise from other things. And I think that's really, really useful. When it comes to EMFs and radiation, I would always recommend that you don't sleep with your phone next to your face or your head. Ideally, you put it in airplane mode so it minimizes all the signals coming to and from it, because those signals are going through your body. When we go to bed, phone is in airplane mode, and then we put it like out of arm's distance so it's not next to our bodies, disrupting our sleep patterns. And then routers, like wireless routers and things, I definitely do not recommend having it in your bedroom. I would put it in your office or somewhere away from the bed. You want to make your bed this really electronic-free zone and environment so that your body can heal itself. Ideally, you're turning off your wireless routers in the evening. And then putting your phone to bed is really powerful. I don't know if that picture makes a whole lot of sense. That's my little bed for my phone. So what we like to do is when we come into our bedroom, it's like, all right, we're going to bed. This is a place to sleep. I'm going to take my phone and I'm going to plug it into the wall over here, and I'm going to tuck it in and put it to bed. And I may use it for an alarm, so I can still hear the alarm, but I'm not going to check my phone until I get up in the morning. Because the tendency is, if I have my phone near me, then I want to look at my phone during the night, and I want to see how much time I have left. And that initiates this subconscious countdown in your mind. And ideally what you're doing is you're focused on sleep, and if you wake up fine, but you're not looking at that phone until you get up in the morning. And I think that's been really, really powerful for a lot of us. And then we always get the question about how to measure sleep accurately. I personally love the Oura Ring. I think the Oura Ring is the most accurate thing I've ever used out there. I absolutely love it. It is mainly focused on sleep. And the Whoop strap is also really useful. Cost a monthly subscription. I didn't like how long it took to download the data from the strap, and I always had to have it on Bluetooth, but maybe that's just me, and maybe they've improved it. I've worn both of these, and I love the Oura Ring. Oura Ring's going to be about $300, but I think it's worth the investment. The Fitbit trackers and things, I'm not sure how accurate those things are. I mean, a little information is better than nothing, but the Oura Ring, by far, I think is going to be the best measure for it. So
I agree. I love the Oura Ring.
You got one too? Yeah, they're so great.